Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to BrightBond, the podcast about real human connections across generations, cultures, and everyday's life. I'm Patrick Duriaux, and here we share real conversation that leaves you with practical ideas to create more connection at home, at work, in your community. Today's podcast, it's about the theme, the room you create. Or in other words, your presence shapes the emotional climate around you. And to speak about this great topic, I'm honored to have a wonderful leader with me today. I'm honored to have Rich Barron, who is the COO, Chief Operating Officer of John Mattone Global. He's also an intelligent leadership master coach with over 25 years of coaching experience. He worked with leaders around the world to grow with clarity, confidence, and humanity. And in this episode, we will explore with Rich what is and what it really takes to build trust, strengthens relationships, and create meaningful connection at work and in real life. Rich, it's great to have you here, and welcome to BrightBond.
Thank you, Patrick. I am honored. I'm truly honored because we talk a lot outside of this. We've done a lot of work together, and I not only am I really excited for what this podcast is going to bring to people, because I know the messages are going to be truly important, but even more so, it gives me another chance to us to bring up more topics and talk. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, Patrick.
No, you're most welcome, and it's a great pleasure to have you in this podcast. You have so much experience as a leader, as a coach, as a COO. You've got international background. You work with leaders around the world, so I think it's going to be great also for the auditors to listen to you. And it's so great that you share your experience with us. I think it's amazing. So let me ask you some introduction question. So if I may ask you, how old are you and where are you based? In which city and country for our auditors?
Well, I am great question, and I am based in Utah, in the United States. I live just north of Salt Lake City. I've always loved the mountains. I've grown up around the mountains. Wherever I've lived, if I've lived in places that didn't have mountains, I always find myself coming back to Utah. It's just one of those things that brings me home. And I'm 61 years old, so I've, had a lot of opportunity to live different places in my life and visit different places. And, the one thing that I find so fascinating is the beauty in so many different areas. But when you call home home, that's kind of what touches you. And that's why I live here, where I do. My family's here, born and raised in this area. So that's a little bit about where I live. And, uh, I have me and my wife, we have 8 children.
Wow, fantastic.
We're a blended family. We both had three when we got married, and we've had two since. So, and all of them, well, with the exceptions, a couple live in different parts of the United States, but for the most part, we're all right here.
Wonderful. That's amazing. And it's also something I think we have in common. It's the love for nature, love for the mountains and outdoors activities. So it's great. I know we always speak about that together. So it's nice to
Yeah.
also hear that you are also in a beautiful region in the US, surrounded by amazing nature. So that's fantastic. I also wanted to, I like to usually start the Bright Bond podcast on a positive note. I also like to speak about positive energy. I wanted just to ask you, what gives you energy at the moment, Rich?
What gives me energy at the moment? That's a very interesting question. And the answer may seem cliche, but the older you get in life, the more you move through a career
Mm,
or you obtain success, it really if you can instill that in others, the reason why you got there or how you got there, and to see them follow suit, that is has become something that I've realized in, maybe the last 20 years or so, that is one of the most rewarding things that you can do. Just as an example, right before we got on this podcast, one of the reasons I got into coaching, executive coaching, because I worked as a job coach for
Mm,
quite a while, even during my career in medical device. But one of the things that I did this morning is I worked with a large group of people. There was about 40 individuals in this group this morning that I was talking about creating value. And that's one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about,
mm,
Patrick. How do we create value in our lives? How do we build confidence so that when we do talk to potential employers or whoever that may be, how does that value that we created, that belief in ourselves, come across as that, we talk a lot about this high potentials, right? High
mm,
performers, high potentials. How can you really create that value? And to see, just even in short meetings, the change in mindset, that, you see the light bulbs going off. It's like, okay, I never thought about that. But those are those things that you see down the road that when they start, they get back on their feet, or they get a job, or leaders become better leaders, or their organizations become better organizations. It's because of that individual transformation. And that's incredibly rewarding. That gives me energy. It truly does at this stage in my life. Along with, there's a lot of other things that give me energy. I love music. I love my family, love the outdoors. But if you talk about the professional aspect of what we do as coaches, it really is about helping others succeed.
mm.
And when that happens, that's incredibly rewarding.
Amazing. I think we're going to talk a bit more about that, and also the work you've done to help leaders around the world. That's great to hear. And I like also the fact that you spoke about changes. We're going to also speak about that. And on that note, the theme of this podcast is also the atmosphere in a room. I wanted to ask you, as a person, what would be maybe a time in your career, in your life, when you enter a room and you felt instantly a feeling of belonging. So it's not always easy, right? Sometimes you go to networking events or you go to wherever the meeting is, and maybe you don't feel welcome, or you feel a bit, oh, that's a cold room here. So in the opposite side, have you experienced where you enter the room and you felt such a, a feeling of belonging here? So I'd like to understand what happened then. Why was it such a feeling, a great feeling when you entered that room?
That's a great question, Patrick. And if I can answer it backwards,
Sure.
about give you an example of a room that I entered, a place that I entered that was just the opposite. And kind of, if I can phrase it that way, because I think that's a critical thing that happened one time for me. And I talk a lot about organizational culture, the feeling of belonging. What does it feel like when you walk through the door of that business? And there was one instance with a large organization that's based in Utah that I was asked to come talk to the vice president of manufacturing there. And so I set the appointment. I went down to the place, and it was just like this big warehouse almost. There was really no signs indicating that there was a front door or there was an office or there was a reception area. And I had to look for a minute and finally found something that looked like it. Wasn't certain, but the door was open. I went inside, and sure enough, it was a reception area, but the lights were off. There was nobody at the reception table, the reception desk. There was actually a janitor's cart that was pushed behind the reception desk. And the strange thing about it is there were people, there was a hallway right there, and people were walking up and down the hallway. They were just passing me. Nobody stopped. Nobody said anything, and I was just confused.
Mm.
I'm thinking, is this a functioning reception area? Am I in the wrong part of the building? Is this an old reception area? And so I actually got my phone and I called the guy I was supposed to have a meeting with. And I said, I'm here in the building, but I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. And I told him where I was. He goes, oh, no, that's the reception area.
Okay.
And so he came and got me. And, the rest of the meeting went really strange. I'll tell you. And I'm not going to get into that, but I'll tell you what, the room itself set the stage for everything that happened the rest of that day. And needless to say, it was a very uncomfortable conversation for the vice president because he was called out of that meeting by, I'm assuming it was the CEO of the company that said, no, I need you right now. You can't stay and talk to this guy. And it was very uncomfortable. That room set the stage,
Mm.
set the stage for the way I felt. It set the stage for, and it was an absolute reflection on what the organization was about, the people there. Everything was about that. It was cold. It was not inviting. There was no one there to greet you and say, hello, how are you doing? But on the other hand, I have been in situations where when you walk into the room, and I'm going to use the same analogy that I've done, I've walked into other buildings where the lobby is clearly marked. The reception area is clearly marked. You walk in and you see there's someone there to greet you. And there was one place in particular here in Utah that I went into, and it was a very large credit union. Okay. Um, and I walked into the reception area, and immediately I was greeted, hello, you must be Rich. We've been expecting you. They knew that I was coming, and it was just like this great conversation. And here's the funny thing about this, Patrick. I remember as I walked in, I wear glasses, and as I walked into the lobby, it was raining outside, so I had raindrops on my glasses.
Okay.
The person behind the desk noticed that
Uh,
and handed me a cloth to clean my glasses with. And from there on, I met with the CEO, and as I walked down the hall with this CEO, everybody stopped and, how are you doing? And he greeted people by name.
mm.
He knew them. He knew these people, and they were not afraid to come up to him. And I know this guy personally. He's very imposing. He's 6'5". He's a big guy,
Okay.
just tall, just wide, and it could be a pretty imposing figure. But yet people were just like, how are you doing? And that was all set the tone by when I walked in. The tone for what happened later on in that business was evident when I walked into that front room and the front, maybe not the front room, but the front reception area, where it just felt warm,
Mm.
inviting. You were invited in. You felt immediately like you were welcome, and they were expecting you.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds
That's a difference. Yeah.
so. Yeah, it sounds like it from what you explained that they were prepared to welcome you, and it seems that they also had very nice gesture when you explain what's happened with your glasses. So those little things seems to have had an impact on you feeling coming to that environment, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that is something that has stuck with me.
Mm.
The simple gesture of, oh, I see you've got rain on your glasses. Here, use this to wipe your glasses off with. I've never had that happen before, and I've never had that happen since.
Mm.
But
Okay.
it set a tone, and it's not about the glasses, it wasn't about the rain, it wasn't about the cloth. It was about, how do you feel going into that room?
Mm.
And
Very
as
important.
leaders, as us, how are we setting that stage for the rooms that we're in?
Mm. It's a very good question, actually. And you spoke about this leader was a very tall leader. And I really like the fact that you also said sometimes you feel seen and sometimes you don't feel seen in a room. And with your expertise and as an executive coach, you've coached a lot of leaders. If you had to give maybe a tip for leaders, what would you say that's one leadership behavior that really reliably makes people feel seen? Sometimes leaders are not letting people being seen, so people might not really engage with them or not being proactive in the meeting or the project they're working on. So if you would have a tip to give to leaders, what would be the leadership behavior you will tell them to behave or to be, to be present and reliably make people feel seen in a room?
This is such a simple answer.
Okay.
And it really is a simple answer because we think about how do we invite people in the room? Is it the way we look? Is it the way we're dressed? Is it the way we speak? Is it the way we present ourselves? But there's one key to this, and it's so simple. Smile.
Mm,
Smile. There's something about a smile, even from a senior leader, if they're looking at you and they smile or you smile, that immediately changes the course of a conversation.
mm,
It changes the course of how you feel versus if you walk into a room and the people you're going to meet are all just stoic and not really open and friendly. How do you feel? You don't know where to start.
mm,
You don't know where to start, and it can throw you off. But just that first step, being friendly, being open, smile, being willing to greet people and meet them. Because here's the thing, Patrick, we've talked a lot about this. You've been a CHRO. You're a CHRO now. You've been in the C-suite positions, and that's a place. Being in a C-suite position, because we've talked about this, people inevitably, because of the title, are apprehensive to have a conversation with you. Oh, that's Patrick. I can't go down the hall. I can't knock on his door. I can't just walk up and say hi to Patrick. But me knowing you, I know you're not that way. I know you're very outgoing, very friendly. But the same token is, are you that person that people are afraid to come talk to?
that's very
Because
interesting.
yeah, go. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Sorry, that's really interesting what you said because it is, as you said, a simple habit to smile. And I know that sometimes we are so absorbed with what we need to do or what we need to achieve, and maybe we just forget to smile. But you're right, it just
yeah,
change the room atmosphere if you smile, and it really help people to feel welcome. But it's true that sometimes we are busy, we're thinking about the next meeting or about what we need to achieve, and maybe we are so focused, so concentrated that we forget to smile. So it's a very good tip, and thanks for sharing that with us, Rich.
yeah.
I
Thank
also,
you.
sorry, please go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just gonna say, there's just something about breaking the ice.
Mhm.
And because here's the thing, and I just want to add this really quick. We all get up in the morning. We all have our challenges. We all, who knows what might have happened on the way to work. We might have got a flat tire in our car, or the train was late, or the train broke down, or you missed a train, or it was raining and you got your suit all dirty. Whatever that might be, we all have those days. What happens if a smile from a leader completely changes the course of what your day is going to be like? Or you as a leader can change the course of the people that work for you, the course of their day. It's a simple gesture.
Mm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It makes a difference. Absolutely. That's very interesting. You also spoke about culture. We love that topic. We spoke about this topic together. A lot of companies speak a lot about the culture. Culture is very crucial, very important. Some companies believe they have a culture, and maybe they don't have a culture, depending what is the definition of culture. But coming back to leadership and culture, again, how can you think leaders can build connection without it feels like a program, but more like a culture? So how would you advise leaders to build connection that doesn't feel like a robotic connection, but more again like a culture? You tap on that topic already a little bit, but can you go a bit deeper with that one? Because I think it's very important and it definitely touch the whole culture of the company.
Yeah. Here's one of the things about companies and organizational culture is that every company out there with a great culture is built by people. People.
Mhm.
It's the people who build the processes, people who build the relationships, people who build everything about that, whether we utilize AI, which is a big thing now. But the real key to culture comes down to people. And is the leader, the CEO, are they truly exemplifying what the purpose of the organization is? One of the biggest waste in any companies out there, and I come from operational background, I come from manufacturing background. We talk about waste in process, waste in
Mhm.
the process, right? How do we improve or get rid of that waste? But the problem is we can't look at the process because the biggest waste in any organization on the planet, bar none, is people's time, people's energy, people's talents, people's skills, people
Mhm.
not effectively engaging the people in the organization. And how do we do that? There are several keys, and that's probably the topic for almost another podcast. I don't know, because we could really get into this.
Yeah, you're right.
But how do you engage people? Initially it's through communication, being transparent, being trustworthy, building trust. And how do you do that? It's building those relationships. Now, as a CEO, they may not have the ability to build a relationship with everybody in the company. That's not going to happen.
Mhm.
You're not going to get to know everybody in the company, but you do have the ability to communicate to everybody in the company one way or another.
Mhm.
And that's where the transparency can come across. That's where the trust can come across. And it's not just about speaking it, you got to live that too. I mean, that's a different topic altogether.
Mhm.
But again, I think it's the most important piece to culture is people, building those relationships, engaging people. And that's why when we work with cultures, Patrick, we measure two different things. We measure the culture and we measure the engagement of the people because they're not one and the same. They're different. And that's why, the engaged people are really key to what happens.
It's interesting. It's very linked with teamwork as well, right? And I also wanted to ask you, because you work with a lot of different teams, from leadership level, C-suites, to teams who are working in any type of industry. So, what would you say? Sometimes you have teams who are maybe dysfunctional, they don't communicate well. So, what would be for you a simple habit for a dysfunctional team to maybe a team that you could compare maybe even to a community? So very much a team who works almost like a family. So what would you give as a tip for a team who doesn't work well at the moment, but you really want to turn that to a community team, a team who works like a family?
It's interesting you say this because this is a big topic that is in every company. The biggest buzzword out there for every company is culture. It
Mhm.
really is. We got a great culture, and in many instances they assume that perks are culture or whatever that might be. Culture is a big buzzword, and it's one of those things that really is not truly understood. The second biggest buzzword in any company is teams.
Mhm.
We got teams. We got great teams. We build a team here. We've got a team here. One of the things that you can do with any company out there, any of your listeners, I challenge you to do this. Go meet with one of the teams in your company and ask them a specific question. Tell me about some of your wins. And wait, sit back and see what they tell you. Here's the reason why this doesn't always work is because we view, in a lot of ways, we put teams together by people that we know. Does that make sense? The
Yeah.
good old boys club in some ways. Or, a team within a silo, within a department. We got a team in an apartment. That's not cross-functional teamwork. That's a siloed team
Mm.
made up of people in your silo. Real teams are made up of effective talent. It's always about talent, always has been about talent, always will be about talent. Talent in the right place for the right reasons, for the right opportunities. And that might change. That might always change, but making sure that when you first put your teams together, that it's not just based on the good old boys club or the people that I know in my department. It's made up of truly effective talent that can work together. The other thing too is having an effective reason to have that team together. Teams don't a team doesn't function well because they're a team. A team functions well because they have a reason to function and they have excitement around that to function. They have a vision to function. What's the purpose of the company? What's going to happen if we put this project together and how it's going to impact all of us down the road? That's one of those areas around organizations that they fail to understand. The teams are not simply about putting a bunch of people in a room and trying to decide what problem we're going to solve next. That's completely backwards. That truly is backwards. And it's also about having an effective team leader, right?
Mm.
Having
Absolutely.
effective leadership to
Yeah.
lead those teams. So again, I'm probably rambling here at this point, Patrick, but it's
Well,
it's one of those things that I'm truly passionate about
I can
because
feel.
effective teams make effective companies, make successful companies, make effective culture. All comes back to talent and people and engaged employees.
Yeah, I can feel the passion in what you just said, the passion you have for people, which is very beautiful to see and hear. You also spoke about talent in general. We spoke together about high potential, high performer. One of the topic that I really have in my heart is cross-generational leadership. I used to do mentoring programs for companies where we would match more seniors leaders with more younger generation of leaders and really try to make them connect, try to maybe also pass on knowledge together. So on the cross-generational topic, what do you think helps older leaders or more senior leaders, more seasoned leaders, and younger colleagues to trust each other faster? What would you say that can help?
Here's the thing that I've always found is just open communication, listening to what they have to tell you, regardless of age, right? You could be, the old guy like me, 61 years old, whatever that might be, but everybody has something they truly love. And they want to tell you about that. They want to tell you about that experience, right?
Mm.
Ask questions and then listen. Be open, be out there, make yourself available for these people and say hi to them, talk to them, ask them what makes them tick, listen about that. And then if you have something that you can really identify with, whether that's the outdoors, whether that's music. Um, I was talking to and my love for music
Yes.
and my love for music. I love music all across all genres, all generations. Music for me is really how people feel.
Mm.
It's an and so when that's one way you can really connect with people. What do you like to listen to? Wow. And then if you can come back and say, I shocked some people, some younger kids recently. I said kids that probably were in their 30s. I don't know. That's a kid to me still. But nonetheless, I was talking to him about Post Malone. I love Post Malone. He's from here in Utah, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, he lives here in Utah, and so he's a big Utah name. But I love his music. I've always have. Now, well, I've said that to some people, and they're like, "How do you know who Post Malone is?" Right there, just completely broke the ice, and it allows for that building bridges across generations. The true key isn't about music. The true key isn't about whether you love the outdoors or not. It's about listening, making yourself available, and allowing them to share with you experiences. Here's something else. I want to. This is a something I want to add. Leaders, if you're listening, when someone chooses to share an experience with you, that's a big sign of trust
Mm.
and respect. Make sure that you do not come back and criticize what they just told you. Because when people decide to share an experience with you, that's them opening up. It really is. And if you start shutting them down or criticizing that experience, you just slam the door on any future conversation. Because it's not your experience, it's theirs. They chose to share that with you. That's how some of these happen, asking these questions and learning, listening. I think anybody can cross that generational bridge. You
Yeah,
you truly can, both ways. It's just making yourself available and having those great conversations and
yeah,
listening
yeah,
and being truly interested.
totally agree with you. And it's great things you say about listening as well. In my experience, I think what's really helped as well is to try to refrain ourselves to have preconceived ideas. Sometimes we have preconceived ideas because of the other person's generation or because the person is from another department, whatever the case might be. And as you say, it's always useful to refrain ourselves, which is a natural reflex as human being to have preconceived ideas because the way people look, the way they dress.
Yeah.
If we manage to do that and to step back and not judge and listen, as you just said, then you do a great step forward with again going to the other one's person world because you're listening to that person. And I've seen mentors and mentees being very surprised. They had preconceived ideas, and after 6 months, I was asking them, "So how is it your relationship?" And they would say, "Well, I would never believe how this person was, and I was totally wrong about that person." So it comes back to listen and leaving the space to listen. So it's
Oh, yeah.
really great that you mentioned that, Rich.
And here's the thing too, when the people that you lead realize that you have a genuine interest in who they are, not the color of their skin, not their gender, not any of that, but who they truly are. They'll
Mm.
jump through hoops for you. They'll follow you anywhere. And that's part of the key to great leadership.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I also wanted to ask you a personal question because you have so much positive energy and you drive so much project forward. If I would ask you maybe what is your favorite micro moment to create warm? You are a warm guy. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. So what would be your own favorite little micro moment to create warmth in meetings? Your habit, or do you have habits to do that, to create that warmth?
Here's one of the things that I like to do in meetings, and not only it starts with that introduction, right? Introducing who you are. But then as the meeting goes on or the conversation goes on like today, you allow time for people to you can call on them, but allow them the space to give their opinion.
Mhm.
And again, that's critical when you do that. And not everybody's going to jump in, right? Not everybody's going to jump in and raise their hands. But as you start allowing those people to, and you start listening to what they have to say, and not coming back and criticizing, anything, maybe having a healthy conversation around that. That creates that warm space where people are going to open up.
Mhm.
So it's not always about me in the room or you in the room or the speaker in the room. That's not the case. It's how you bring that warmth and invite people into the conversation. So it's not simply about because we know as coaches, people don't learn by us telling them. They don't learn that way. They learn by experiencing this and being able to grow from the experience. And that happens with a lot of that, being able to open up in a conversation. Who knows? They might have someone in that room has a hard time with public speaking or
Mm.
opening up in public. But if you create that warm space, what does that do for their confidence down the road?
Very great inputs, Rich, here. And I'd like always to finish the BrightBond podcast with what I call the BrightBond tip. If I may ask you, if you had one tip, one little action that the listeners can take this week to create belonging in their workplace, what would you give them as a tip? Something easy they can apply next week.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If you can smile or help one person change the course of their day and make them forget about all the troubles they have and just feel welcome, feel part of something more, you've done your job. You really have. One person.
Mm.
You don't have to go out and impress the whole company or the whole team, but if you can change the course of that day for one person, you've done your job. And you do that every single day, what have you done? And if they start doing that for others, what have they done? So that's my tip. Try to
Wonderful.
change the course of one person's day. Get them to forget about their troubles.
That's a wonderful tip, Rich. I'd like to thank you so much for being on Brightbond today. It was a really great conversation. I really appreciated, again, your warmth, because you're a warmth person, great leader, your practical tips as well for the auditors, and to connect leadership to real human connection. I think you've done that fantastically today. So a big thank you for that to you. I also would like to quickly sum up the conversation of today, and you just tapped on that. I think connection is built on small, consistent action, presence, as you said, Rich, listening, trust, probably not on big speeches. So, to everyone listening, thank you for being here. My question for you is, what is one small action you're going to take this week to create a stronger connection? Rich just gave you a bit of a tip right there. And at work, at your personal life, there's things to do. We can do small things, and with small things, we do big things. So thanks again, Rich, for joining us on Brightbond.
Thank you.
And to all of you, take care, stay tuned, and see you next time on Brightbond. Bye for now.